You know what's the most amazing thing about Michigan's path to get here? They've never lost their edge. I mean, we saw it this week during press conferences. The players are wearing Michigan versus everyone. They like proving the doubters wrong. Oh, but it gets worse. It also happened to be his 40th birthday. Lions head coach Dan Campbell, in the words of Taylor Swift, man, why you gotta be so mean? Nike didn't say how the footage would be used. And they definitely didn't explain that through split-screen TV magic, Reed would match up with someone who lives in Italy. About 10 minutes into Michigan State's game with Wisconsin, I seriously began to question why I even bothered to show up. Michigan State didn't show up. I mean, granted, they didn't play well for pretty much most of the game, but when they were locked in those final 5 or 6 minutes, they looked fantastic. Now, Jared says all the right things. He talks the talk, but it all comes down to whether it tastes good, and now we're going to find out. And that is pretty good.
That's a touchdown.
Oh, you see, and that's the advantage right there, Jamal, of having 4 legs as opposed to 2 as we take a look at the replay. Get that burst of speed and then boom! I just want to say a big prediction tomorrow. The Lions are not going to lose, I promise you. And you know why?
Aren't they
not playing?
Because they're off. It doesn't matter. No one can recall its exact location.
I don't remember the address.
Or that some of the details have been lost through time.
All I know is it was very close to the Burger King.
What matters is that each man can remember how one home helped make them the leaders they are today.
I think it shaped all of us because none of us were making any money. You know, the only reason we weren't married is we didn't have enough money to take girls out on a date.
This was the life of 3 up-and-coming Michigan State coaches in the late 1980s. Tom Izzo, Tom Crean, and Jim Boylan are big time now, but back in 1989, they were 3 single guys trying to survive, working for the legendary Judd Heathcote, and trying to save a buck by rooming together in a 3-bedroom house in Hazlitt.
But my room was good. It was certainly the best investment you could possibly make because Tom charged Jim Boylan and myself $200 a month to live with him.
Izzo owned the house.
I was a slumlord.
So he got to make the rules.
One of my favorite things about Tom Izzo is he hasn't changed a bit.
And just as his current players at Michigan State would attest, Izzo ran a tight ship. Crean and Boylan were expected to chip in with the chores and keep things clean, a skill Crean admits wasn't his strongest.
I'm sure I didn't carry my weight like Jim and Tom did, but fortunately they never kicked me out.
It took a little bit of digging, but we found it. Right at the end of the block, the house, the basketball laboratory, and the place where for 1 year, 3 men worked nonstop to perfect their craft and move closer toward their dreams.
It was great because we worked all day together. We stayed at the office, went home to sleep, and that was about it.
For each future head coach, there was no escaping basketball. And that was exactly the way they liked it. Because not only were they learning on the job, they were also learning from each other.
I learned from Tom Izzo that, you got to try to push your guys to a place they can't take themselves. And you do that by having a relationship with them first.
Inevitably, the trio went their separate ways. But while their careers have taken them in different places, they remain close, still connected by this house that in just a short time became their home.
You think about that group, Tom Crane's been to a Final Four. I've been to a Final Four. Jimmy's, been a part of 2 world championships and a head coach in the NBA. I'd say that there was pretty good water in that, in those places we lived.
Mike Lacett, 13 on Your Side Sports.
Lights out on that pace car.
Jeff Striegel's job title says he's the head NASCAR radio play-by-play announcer.
Over Kurt Busch, Matt DiBenedetto.
But that is not the way he sees it.
Let's do it right, Mike. Let's make sure we do it right.
Okay. Instead, the Wyoming native views himself more as a co-anchor, which is a much more accurate description of his role.
I think what makes magic for radio is the fact that all of our mics are always live.
You see, unlike most sports, NASCAR on the Motor Racing Network doesn't use one play-by-play announcer to describe the action.
Byron looking high, looking low.
They use 4.
When we get going, we do a baton-style handoff.
With the Hendrick Motorsports Chevrolet.
They've got one more shot at Ryan Blaney.
I'll pick up. They sort it out. They continue on. And then the others will take off behind me.
One final shot off the corner.
They'll try to cross over.
They make it sound so easy. Along with racing legend Rusty Wallace serving as an analyst, they have 2 play-by-play announcers in the booth and 2 others around the track, each stationed at a corner. Now here's what's really impressive.
It's all voice inflection.
After a wild slide off the end of the back straightaway.
And the down pitch of the voice is the cue that the next announcer's up next.
Cars go to the apron in turn number 1.
Yup, that's right. There's no button queuing them up, nor is there someone screaming in their ear to start talking. In fact, all producer Ryan Horn primarily does is make sure they make their sponsors happy.
I mean, they're able to carry these things, you know, with all the experience they have it kind of locked down.
The multi-play-by-play announcer approach actually began in 1970 when the Motor Racing Network was formed. Back then, the MRN felt NASCAR needed a shot in the arm. Well, it got one.
It's intense, non-stop, and most of all, fun.
One more run by Byron and it will come up short.
Is it an art? I don't know, but there is always that feeling when you know that the entire group gelled and you delivered the best performance possible.
And when that happens, it's not only a win for them.
Ryan did not let go.
It's one for the audience, too. Mike Lacett, 13 on Your Side Sports. What started as a post-game handshake between Michigan and 15th-ranked Wisconsin turned into a situation where Juwan Howard and a few others were throwing hands. Though nothing official has been decided, you can bet the Wolverines will be down a few players and their head coach for the next game against Rutgers Wednesday. Kohl Center in Madison was where it all went down. Wolverines looking for just their second win over a top 25 team this year. Second half, though, the Badgers started to pull away thanks to a 14-1 run. Johnny Davis scored and won. Game high 25. Suddenly the Badgers were up 11. Now here's what caused the incident. With the game well in hand, Wisconsin called timeout with 15 seconds left. Howard didn't like that, and he let Badgers head coach Greg Gard know about it in the post-game handshake. Not sure who started it, but it got hot fast. Players tried to keep them separated, but then they started jawing too. Howard then starts talking to Wisconsin assistant Joe Kravenhoff, and then right there, that's the shot from Howard. Players started pushing and shoving. Moussa Diabate and Terrence Williams appeared to throw punches. Eventually, they did get everyone to the locker room, but Michigan loses 77-63. Here's what Howard had to say about the fight after the game, and no, he didn't apologize.
I didn't like the timeout being called.
Coach, you're not helping yourself. Now, there's been no official ruling of a suspension for Howard or anyone else, but you can bet it is coming. Big Ten issued a statement now after the game saying they are aware of a physical altercation involving Michigan head coach Juwan Howard. The conference is in contact with both member institutions and is currently assessing the incident. The conference will provide more information and will take swift and appropriate disciplinary action when it completes its review. As you can imagine, after the game, there were calls for Howard to be fired on the spot. Most of those calls came from opposing fans who just want to see the program burn, so we're not going to take them seriously. But I'm very serious that Howard's punishment should be severe. Michigan has 5 games left to go in the regular season, and I don't think Howard should be allowed to coach any of them. If the Big Ten decides that's not good enough and suspends him for the rest of the Big Ten tournament, well, good for them. Fact is, Howard is an adult. He should be an example for his players because, as you saw, they followed his direction, and it turned ugly. And frankly, his explanation at the end of the game stunk. You heard it. He touched you? So what? You walk away. It's as simple as that. Howard let down his players today, but he let down the University of Michigan too. And if he wants to be the Wolverines coach for years to come, this can never, ever happen again. I'd like to know what you think. Send me an email. It's mlacett@wzzm13.com or find me on Twitter. It's @MikeLacett. And that's sports. Michael Barons is back with your final forecast next.